Hey, what's up guys? Kalamazi here, and this is going to be my 8.1.5 Destruction Warlock DPS guide. In it, we will be covering Azerite, talents, trinkets, rotations, cooldown usage, and a few other things along the way for both Mythic Plus and Raid settings. If you're interested in any of the weak auras or add-ons you see here, I will place a link in the description to my Twitch where you can find them all. There will be timestamps in the description if you want to jump to a certain part of the video, and I will also place a link to the most recent Blood Mallet sims there as well. Now let's jump right into it. This is the build that I've been running for Mythic Plus this season as Destruction. In the 15 row, the only real option that we have currently is Flashover for a few reasons. Sadly, while Soulfire is a pretty exciting talent to play with, it's pretty undertuned at the moment and not worth it in any situation. Eradication does increase your Chaos Bolt's damage by 10%, but it's only to the target that you hit with the last cast Chaos Bolt. Flashover provides a significant DPS increase with its buff to Conflag's damage, in addition to also granting another charge of Backdraft. This is especially strong inside Havoc windows. The 30 row brings Reverse Entropy as the talent of choice over both Shadow Burn and Internal Combustion. While Combustion is an interesting talent, it's not very exciting to play with, and is also a single target based talent like Eradication. Shadowburn does see a bit of play on explosive weeks and such, but your best choice here is easily Reverse Entropy. A mini Bloodlust every so often is especially strong, and can lead to some pretty insane Havoc windows or openers. The 45 row is a utility row, and I typically either run Burning Rush or Dark Pact here in Mythic Plus. The additional cooldown Pact brings is nice in higher keys or tyrannical settings. In the 60 row, our only real choice here is Cataclysm. Inferno is an absolute dumpster fire of a talent at the moment, and sadly Fire and Brimstone is also pretty undertuned at the moment. Cataclysm is both a single target DPS gain as well as a very strong CD on trash packs that also applies Immolate to every mob hit by it. The 75 row is another personal preference utility row, but I normally swap between Dark Fury or Mortal Coil here. In the 90 row, Grimoire Supremacy provides an insane amount of additional burst damage with your 3-minute Infernal cooldown, but the unfortunate part is, like I mentioned, it's tied to a 3-minute cooldown. Roaring Blaze is an option of sorts as it does provide a bit of damage smoothing over the run, but Grimoire I feel is still the best choice in this row. Finally, in the 100 row, we have the option of either Dark Soul Instability or Channel Demon Fire, and the winner here, I feel overall, is DSI. It's a very powerful cooldown on a 2-minute CD that further boosts your Infernal / Grimoire / Crushing Chaos damage if used with one another. Channel Demon Fire is an option as well, and enables the Cataclysm in the Channel Demon Fire sequencing on most trash packs, while also providing a bit more consistent burst damage throughout. But in the end, I think both are solid choices, however DSI is ultimately where you want to be. As far as Azerite traits go in Mythic Plus, there are a handful that I want to mention. Crashing Chaos is a general all-around strong option, as Chaos Bolt is one of our main sources of damage. In a very similar fashion to Grimoire Supremacy, however, it is tied to our Summon Infernal CD, which is 3 minutes. Crashing Chaos does bring a tremendous amount of damage with it, however, which is great for bosses and priority mob trash pulls alike. Rolling Havoc is also a very strong choice for Mythic Plus, as the intellect buff it grants is truly exceptional at high stacks. If you're able to set up the proper Havoc sequencing from pole to pole, reaching 5 or more stacks is very simple. Flashpoint is another trait that's very strong for Mythic Plus, and brings with it a tremendous amount of potential burst damage on each trash pack. Casting Cataclysm or Immolate on its own will provide a Flashpoint proc very quickly, which then enables a pretty big Havoc window as well. Pairing it with Rolling Havoc can produce some pretty insane results on trash packs also. Traits like Chaotic Inferno and Chaos Shards are decent choices as well, as they bring both a damage increase as well as a chance to proc something extra. They do lose value at 2 or more stacks though, as the random procs do not stack. Stat-based traits such as Treacherous Covenant, Blightborn Infusion, and others are solid options as well, as they directly affect each spell you cast. Just be aware of Covenant's actual downside. Looking at trinkets, you certainly want to try and acquire an Ignition Mage's Fuse as your main trinket from Toll to Gore. Seeing as how Mage Fuse is an on-use trinket, your other one should be an equipped trinket if at all possible. Having 2 on-use trinkets and using one puts the other on a 20-second CD thus not allowing the use of both of them at the same time. This leads to your second unused trinket sitting off CD for longer than it actually should. Trinkets such as Lady Waycrest Music Box, Conch of Dark Whispers, Crest of Paku, and Incandescent Sliver are all solid options, but your best choice will most likely come down to eye level if you have more than one option. It is worth noting that even though a trinket like Music Box might sim higher than your Crest of Paku, it's typically worth wearing a stat-based trinket in Mythic Plus over pure single target ones like Music Box, barring there being a huge eye level discrepancy. Destruction is the actual king of 2-target cleave when inside a Havoc window, and to be honest, there's not a whole lot to the actual Havoc windows themselves. You want to set up for your Havoc by pooling up to about 4 shards, then applying Havoc to one target. Swap to the other and cast Conflag into double Chaos Bolt. At this point, you should have your second Conflag coming off CD, which you can then cast and then typically go right into another Chaos Bolt. Havoc does generate twice the amount of actual resources than you do single target, so double Conflag, triple Chaos Bolt windows are pretty easy to come by with the proper setup. As far as cooldown usage goes for trash in Mythic Plus, you typically want to open on Cataclysm into Infernal, into your CDs, and then a Havoc window. You should be able to squeeze in 3 Chaos Bolts as well as a few other casts if under the effects of Backdraft and Flashpoint. If the pack will actually live for a decent while, you can push your CDs outside of your Infernal back a bit later, but remember that Havoc's on a 30-second cooldown, so you're only getting one window regardless during your Infernal, and also leaving Havoc off cooldown for a bit as well. It is worth noting that Rain of Fire is a DPS increase at 3 or more targets outside of a Havoc window, and a DPS increase at 5 or more targets regardless of Havoc. Rain of Fire does also stack, but if there's a priority mob in the pack, it will most likely be worth focusing down with Chaos Bolt instead of padding, in a sense, with Rain of Fire. Taking a look at single target / raid talents here, you will notice that not much really changes from the actual Mythic Plus build we just spoke about. Flashover is still the talent you want in the 15 row, as the bonus damage it brings in addition to an extra backdraft proc is very strong. In the 30 row, Reverse Entropy is still the talent of choice as well, as a mini Bloodlust is really strong regardless of the spot you're in. The 45 row is the utility row as mentioned, and the vast majority of the time I have Burning Rush as my talent of choice here in raids. The additional movement speed it provides is a huge plus in almost every scenario. In the 60 row, our only option that we actually have is Cataclysm. It's both a single target and multi-target DPS gain, which should effectively be cast on cooldown. Both Inferno as well as Fire and Brimstone are not even worth considering, regardless of the fight structure currently. The vast majority of the time, I have and recommend Demonic Circle in the 75 row, as it provides a great deal of utility when it comes to certain mechanics such as the knockup on Mythic Mechatorque, as well as a way to traverse an area quickly if placed well. You can pretty much always find some use on every fight for your Demonic Circle, barring it being totally patchwork. In the 90 row, Grimoire Supremacy is going to be the talent that you want here. It is a bit unfortunate that it's tied directly to our Infernal, which is on a 3-minute cooldown, but it brings with it an insane amount of burst damage, especially when paired with Crashing Chaos traits. Destruction in its current form is mostly a cooldown based spec, bringing exceptional burst damage every 3 minutes, and then a mediocre amount outside of like Flashpoint and Rolling Havoc fights in between cooldowns. Finally, we have the 100 row, and the choice you should make here is Dark Soul Instability. DSI brings even more burst damage to our Infernal cooldown if paired with it, and a bit more damage than normal even if used outside of it. Channel Demon Fire certainly has more merit in Mythic Plus, but is sadly not strong enough to be a contender in raids currently. It is worth noting that you want to save your final DSI for your final Infernal pretty much every boss encounter. I will elaborate a bit more on that when we talk about Destruction's opener and CD usage in a bit here. Looking at actual Azerite traits, Crashing Chaos, Rolling Havoc, and Flashpoint are certainly the standout traits this tier. Crashing Chaos brings with it a tremendous amount of burst potential, but as we mentioned before, it's tied to your Infernal cooldown. Rolling Havoc is a very strong choice on boss encounters where there are multiple targets present or ads spawning throughout the fight. The intellect bonus it grants at high stacks is very significant, and the trait loses no value at 2 and 3 stacks. It's an exceptional choice for multi-target fights. Flashpoint is an interesting trait as it effectively is dead after the boss drops below 80% health. The interesting thing about Flashpoint, however, is that on fights where there are adds or multiple bosses, if one of them stays above 80% health, you effectively can have 100% uptime, well, at least like a really high percentage, on Flashpoint, which pretty much ends up being a personal, permanent bloodlust. Fights like Champion of the Light, Jade Fire Masters, Conclave, Mechatork, and even Blockade and Jaina are excellent Flashpoint encounters. Traits like Chaotic Inferno and Chaos Shards are decent choices as well, as they bring both a damage increase as well as a chance to proc something extra. They do lose value at 2 or more stacks though, as the random procs do not stack. Stat-based traits such as Treacherous Covenant, Blightborn Infusion, and others are solid options also, as they directly affect each spell you cast. Just be aware of Covenant's actual downside. Bursting Flare is also a solid option, but typically overshadowed by the plethora of choices Destruction has. Destruction's single target opener is pretty simple, to be honest, once you get the actual flow of things down. You can start off by precasting Incinerate into Cataclysm, followed by Summon Infernal. I typically cast Conflag into one Chaos Bolt and then fill with Incinerate until about 21 seconds remaining on my Infernal. At this point, you now want to pop your Dark Soul, and for me, my Mage Fuse Trinket, cast Conflag, and then begin to dump as many Chaos Bolts as possible before your Infernal expires. Delaying your Dark Soul and Trinket use to this point makes it so that your Infernal, DSI, and Trinket expire at right about the same time, thus getting you the most value out of your opening burst window in later Supremacy Crashing Chaos traits. The same rotation should be followed anytime you're going to be casting your Infernal and DSI together. Different trinkets have different durations and cooldowns though, so be sure to keep that in mind if you don't have a Mage Fuse Trinket as of yet. Pet damage in BFA has been normalized across the board for both Affliction and Destruction, but each pet does bring with it a bit of utility. The Imp brings with it both a small heal for the Warlock as well as Singe Magic. The Fell Hunter, on the other hand, brings with it an Interrupt on a 24-second cooldown as well as a Purge. The Imp is technically the best option when it comes to pure DPS, as it does not have to run between targets when swapping to them, but the DPS difference is very minor. As far as stat weights go in actual gear sims, the best way to tell where your own individual character is sitting is a raidbots.com top gear sim. It will take all of your current gear into account as well as other options if selected and give you the highest actual stat you have available. Stat weights fluctuate a bit between different characters and often shift a great deal when trying to compensate for one in a stat weight sim, so top gear is the actual way to go. Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope this video helped you all get a better understanding of Destruction in 8.1.5 and heading into Crucible of Storms. Let me know what you thought of it and your thoughts on current Destruction in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them there and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to see more WoW content and help support the channel, smash those like, share, and subscribe buttons as your support really helps. I also have a link to my Twitch in the description where you can acquire any of the weak auras or add-ons you've seen here. Thanks again, dudes, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace.